listening to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, a podcast where we explore what it's like getting older, the peaks, the valleys, and everything in between. In this season of Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, we're covering topics related to vibrant aging. I'm your host, Cheryl Praska. Let's grow old together. On today's episode, I'm joined by SAGE representatives Terri Clark and Sadiya Abjani. SAGE is a national advocacy and services organization that's been looking out for LGBTQ plus elders since 1978. SAGE builds welcoming communities and keeps LGBTQ plus issues in the national conversation to ensure a fulfilling future for all LGBTQ plus people. As a SAGE certified trainer, Terri provides an array of SAGE care trainings to service providers so they can in turn serve LGBTQ plus older adults and their networks with inclusive, supportive services. As SAGE's Director of Learning and Instructional Design, Sadiya develops and delivers trainings through multiple mediums, including in-person, webinar-based, and fully interactive online curriculum. Before we dive into today's episode, a note for our YouTube viewers that Sadiya's camera pauses during the episode. The audio is still perfect. You'll just see a picture of her throughout much of the episode today. Now, let's get started. Terri and Sadiya, welcome and thank you for being here. How are you both today?
Doing
Oh,
great.
good
Nice
now.
to be here. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. So, Terri and Sadiya, you're joining me today to talk about SAGE, aging in the LGBTQ plus community, and how we can show up in support of this group. Let's start by learning a bit more about your backgrounds and what you do at SAGE. Sadiya, would you like to go first?
Sure. So, Sage Care is a cultural competency training and credentialing program that is housed in Sage, the organization. So, what I do is I build all of our training content, and I'm our lead trainer. So, I've been working at Sage for just under 10 years. And through that time, we've built about 17 different pieces of content and trained hundreds of thousands of providers. So it's been a wonderful journey working with Sage and exploring the needs and experiences of LGBT older adults and how to have the most impact on care provision.
Thanks for that introduction. Terri, I'll kick it over to you to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Terri Clark. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a consultant trainer with Sage. So I help deliver the trainings and content that Sadiya and her team develop. And I've been doing that work with Sage as a consultant for probably just a little bit longer than Sadiya has been here, maybe about 11 or 12 years. But I've been talking about the issues of LGBTQ inclusion for decades. I identify as an older adult who is part of the LGBTQ community. And it is one of the favorite things that I do in my career is to talk about the issues, have conversations with providers, with residents, with the LGBTQ community to help build bridges and relationships so that people can age with dignity and respect and inclusion. And I'm so excited to be here. Sadiya, thank you for inviting me to be part of the conversation. And Cheryl, you too. And I'm sure we're going to get into that. Friends Life Care has been training with Sage, and I was delighted to be the trainer with Friends Life Care. I'm in Philadelphia, but I work across the country with providers. So, yeah, Cheryl.
Yes, and thank you for the training you provided, Terri, and for both of you again for being here on the podcast and sharing more about this important topic. So, Sadiya, you gave us some initial information about SAGE. I'm curious whether you'd want to share anything more about the organization and the important work that you do before we dive in deeper.
Sure. I can keep going for a while about SAGE, but I'll give you the short version. SAGE is the country's largest and oldest organization focused exclusively on LGBTQ plus older adults. It started in the late 70s with a group of older adults asking a really pivotal and important question: who's going to care for us? The LGBT community often relies on families of choice, and those families of choice are often aging right alongside the individual they're caring for. So as we age, we're not able to provide care in that same way. So, from that pivotal and important question, an organization was born. At first, we started with delivering direct services in New York. We had a senior center that ran out of the LGBT center in Manhattan. And then we grew into a national organization. So, our local services grew in New York, and now we have services in Florida as well. These include direct care services, senior centers, case management, a friendly visitors program, and housing as well. And then from that, our national programs include a bunch of policy advocacy work in different states across the United States, as well as at a federal level. Our SAGE Collab program, which is a program where I think just under 100 groups partner with SAGE and get resources, get information. We all collaborate on how to provide services, care, support to LGBT older adults across the United States. We also have started doing international work in a couple of different areas, and Sage Care itself is growing into the UK and Canada. So, Sage Care, the model we took was, we have decades upon decades worth of information, decades of experience, decades of knowledge that we want to share. And we know that long term care organizations, care across the spectrum, deserves to have that information. So, can we create a system whereby we can train organizations? And as a fee for service program, right? We train organizations, we take the skill and experiences we have and share that with organizations that really do want to make a difference, who want to provide that culturally competent, trauma informed, person centered care. So that was really the goal. And it started from us trying to give away the training for free and say, please take this, to organizations saying, oh, we'll pay you quite a bit of money for this information because we believe expertise should never be given away for free. So we pay our experts, and we hope that this program is having the kind of impact that we want it to, because we can't just build the housing and build the beds that we need. That's impossible to build that much, right? We want to ensure that the communities that our older adults are living in, the um, the experiences that they have are positive in those communities. They get to age in place in the communities they grew up in. They get to age in place in spaces that feel comfortable to them and not be pushed to a specific housing just because it's LGBT inclusive. I told you I was going to keep it short and it went long. I told you I can talk about this forever.
Well, and as a individual who has taken the Sage Care training, I work at Friends Life Care as an organization. It's been our 4th year that we've been Sage Care Platinum credentialed as a provider. It has really been an educational journey for me, and it helps improve the way that I show up from a sales and marketing perspective in the way that we are doing our brand awareness and our nurturing of our prospects and making sure that our prospective and existing Friends Life Care members know that we respect them and honor them however they are. As part of that could be being part of the LGBTQ plus community. So I appreciate that explanation, and you're always articulate, which I also admire in you. So I spoke right before about Friends Life Care being Sage Care Platinum credentialed as a provider. Can you explain to our audience what that means so they have a better context?
Terry, do you want to take that one?
Oh, sure. I can do it to the best of my knowledge. But if I miss anything, please chirp in. So,
Absolutely.
the platinum credential is the highest credential of the Sage Care tiers. And it's all based upon the number of staff who receive the training, in addition to the leadership, the senior management, the board members. So when somebody has a platinum Sage Care credential, that really speaks to the commitment and the involvement of not only the frontline staff that may be, the direct providers of the care and services, but the folks who are in those leadership positions, those folks that are on the board, and their commitment and support of the training and the intentional ongoing work that needs to happen in terms of the programming delivery, all the service deliveries that we talk about in all the best practices. So yeah. So congratulations on that achievement. It's no small feat to have the platinum certified training. Really is a notable endeavor for the organization.
Thank you. So now we've given some context as for the conversation, both of your backgrounds, and learned about more about Sage. I'd really like to start diving into what are some of the challenges that you'd say and you've experienced LGBTQ plus elders face?
Well, I'll get us started, and then Terry, please jump in.
Mhm.
So, on the surface, right, just actually accessing care. This is a community that has experienced a significant amount of employment discrimination, housing discrimination. This is a community that has also been unhoused, right? So we talk about LGBT older adults relying on families of choice. That's because of a lack of access to biological family, right? They may be estranged from their biological family. And we know that periods of being unhoused, periods of not being connected to that biological family or feeling distant from that biological family has a mental health impact, right? It has an impact on achievement. So we have a community of individuals that was told up until the mid 70s that they had a mental disorder for being LGBT. We have a community of individuals that was directly impacted and was alive during the HIV/AIDS crisis. And so just the access of care is a difficulty. Folks delay accessing care for fear of discrimination, discrimination that we have all seen in the medical system, right? Folks delay accessing care for affordability reasons. Folks delay accessing care because they've tried to access care and have experienced either physical or verbal harassment while doing so. So, just that barrier to entry is one of the biggest pieces. Once you get past that, right, you have care providers that may not ask the right questions. They're not talking about being LGBT, and people tend to think that being LGBT is not something we talk about. It's something private. It's something that, it's up to each person and none of my business. But in care provision, it is our business. LGBT individuals being LGBT, that identity is about so much more than who an individual has sex with, right? That's a fun part, but it's not the only part, right? Being LGBT is about an individual's community. It's about their identity. It's about their language, their culture, right? Imagine having to take an important component of who you are and hide it from the world and lie about pieces of yourself because you don't want people to know that part because you don't know how they're going to handle the information. Most spaces and places where LGBT individuals attempt to access care, there's no indication that it's a safe space, right? So our LGBT older adults end up hiding their identities or going back into the closet to access care, which means that in an attempt to provide trauma informed person centered care, we're missing some integral components of who this individual is. So, access to care, receiving culturally competent care. And then when we're talking about long term care or residential care in general, there's also this issue of being discriminated against, not just by the care providers, by other residents as well, right? So these residents have also grown up at a time when being LGBT was considered a mental disorder on one side, and on the other side, almost criminalized in different spaces and places, right? So we grew up at a time where it was okay to discriminate against LGBT people because they were wrong. Growing up with that mindset has an impact.
Hmm.
So it's, not just care providers, it's also residents. Terry?
Yeah. And in addition to all that, when older adults are more in need of the services and supports that are provided by the aging network at large and less likely to access them for all the reasons that Sadia has just shared, And so when we talk to providers and they say, well, we welcome everybody, we respect everybody, everybody is, welcomed here, we're going to provide inclusive care. That may be a very good intention, and that may be, in fact, what people are trying to do. However, our community, our LGBTQ community, does not know that. Their perception of aging services is that they are not going to be welcome. They can't be out. They're going to face discrimination. They are afraid. And so it's incumbent upon providers to be intentional, informed, and deliver those services with signs and symbols and language uh, that people can see, they can hear it, and they can feel it, that they're going to be welcomed. And all those things that happen or that providers can do are all part of the best practices that SAGE talks about in their trainings and in their online resources. So by providers doing a little bit of homework, a little bit of skills building, a little bit of learning some new tools of the work that they're already doing in community, they can really elevate their service provisions and raise the rainbow flag, as we say, to show the LGBTQ community that they are, in fact, welcoming and supportive. And I want to say one other thing as it crosses my mind. We do this work, of course, for our LGBTQ older adults, but we also do this work for their families, their friends, their caregivers. So I like to share the story in a training. If, let's say I'm the daughter of my gay dad, and I'm the person who needs to be looking for services for my gay father, right? I am going to want to put my father in service provision and housing care, whatever that looks like, that's going to be welcoming and inclusive. So if I make the call, I may myself not be part of the LGBTQ community, but I'm a caregiver, I'm a family member. And so all the work we do, it sends that message to everyone, right? Not just the LGBTQ older adult themselves. And one more thing about the staff who are providing the care, right? We all know somebody in 2025 who identifies as part of the LGBTQ community. We are worshiping with them, we are working with them, we are shopping with them, we are in community. And so when we do this work for our organization, we're supporting our LGBTQ fellow staff members, right? Because when they feel affirmed, when they feel like they can bring their authentic selves to the workplace, then they're going to deliver services and supports that are more welcoming, more friendly, and they themselves are going to feel like a valued member of the team.
Terry, this is why you're one of my favorite people. Whenever I chat with you, I'm always re-energized.
Well, right back at you. I mean, and I truly have a passion for this work. It just lights my heart. And so being given opportunities to talk about it and share with people is really, it makes me very, very happy. And when my voice holds out, it's even better.
And one thing that you said, Terry, that spoke to my experience was having the intention and saying, oh, I'm inclusive. I welcome all different types of people. However, I needed to be better educated about the LGBTQ plus older adult community so that I could deliver on my intention. Because all well and good, that's how I feel. That's part of my personal code of ethics. However, if I didn't have the education, could I show up as well as if I did have it? No. So I appreciate again that you provided that training for my organization and for me.
Yeah, Cheryl, that's an excellent point. It's an excellent point because we, as service providers, whether we're social workers or healthcare administrators or nurses, right, doctors, medical providers, we don't learn about the diversity of the people we serve in whatever our training is, whatever our higher education is. And so this training is just, or these trainings are a way to build our tool belt, right? To equip ourselves to be able to have not only the skills but the knowledge
Mhm.
about diverse communities we work with. So yeah, absolutely, Cheryl. Thank you for that.
Would you prefer to age independently in your own home or live in a nursing facility? I know what I'd rather do. Friends Life Care membership offers just that. Plan today for a future lived at home with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience while protecting your savings. Learn about your options at a free seminar or webinar. Register at friendslifecare.org/register or call 215-628-8964. We talked about the challenges that the LGBT plus community faces, especially as it is in regard to older adults. And we started touching on what SAGE does to help address these challenges. I want to open the floor to hear any more that you'd like to add about how SAGE does help address the challenges that the LGBTQ plus older adult community faces.
Sure. So I mentioned, the direct service work we do, the case management, friendly visitors, trying to create community and create spaces of safety and connection. One of the things that I wanted to uplift is, there's a growing discussion amongst care providers about the importance of cultural competency training. We're hitting a period of time where there's a growing anti DEI sentiment, and a notion that cultural competency training, the types of trainings that we provide, are not useful or superfluous. And I just want to say that the amount of work that SAGE does, especially through SAGE Care, to affect hearts and minds has an astounding impact on change. We've been able to change the laws in multiple states to create provisions for a long term care bill of rights. We've been able to train area agencies on aging in states that you wouldn't think would want to be trained. So spaces that are a little bit more conservative, states like Louisiana and Kentucky, places where you wouldn't expect this to happen. Texas, you wouldn't expect this to happen. But the entire states have been trained. And it's through this work in hearts and minds. We truly believe that by having the conversation, even with someone who may not want to, by coming at this from a human to human perspective, by changing hearts and minds, we change how care happens. And so, I shared earlier that one of the issues is conversations that happen among residents or, things like that. But we have a series of resident conversations that we do. And again, it comes down to those hearts and minds, that conversation about who are you, who am I, and how can we support one another? How can we live in community with one another? We're both aging, we're both experiencing what happens when we age, we're both experiencing loneliness and isolation and that lack of connection. So even if we may not agree, how can we connect with one another? So I feel like Sage Care, the work that we do really is about changing hearts and minds, having those dialogues, those one-on-one conversations, and focusing on our shared humanity.
And when I start to think about that, like the human to human element, and it makes me think about these significant historical milestones that LGBTQ plus elders have been through. For example, the Stonewall riots, the AIDS epidemic. The word resilience really comes strong for me.
Mhm.
So I'd like to hear both of your perspectives on how does the resilience of this community contribute to their aging process and influence the younger generations that are part of the community?
Terry, you
Yeah,
want to get started?
sure, sure. So I think for many of our pioneers, many of our activists, that they have seen difficult times, they've lived through the difficult times, but they've also experienced the joy of community connections, of living authentically, changing hearts and minds, as Sadia said. And so that resiliency really comes of it's a positive way to look at how we all face challenges in our lives, and how we can overcome that and use that as our inspiration to keep on keeping on. And I think in terms of building relationships with people who've had different paths of challenging times, who have worked together to embrace that resiliency. I think of older adults I met at a local community center here in Philadelphia, and that the one older adult was not part of the LGBTQ community, but could connect with a person who was part of that community around her experience as a freedom rider, a freedom fighter. So working for the civil rights movement, and the discrimination and prejudice she experienced as a person of color, and how they connected over that shared trauma, right? That shared discrimination, that shared history. Yet they were different histories, different reasons why they were discriminated against, but yet came together and found community, and embraced each other for that resiliency. And it's just one of many stories that I'm privileged to be a part of and hear about and support.
Thank you for that example. It really helps paint the picture. Sadia, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, I think Terry did a wonderful job answering that question.
So I'll move on to my next question then. For any folks who are listening who may want to have a conversation either about identifying as LGBTQ plus, or think a loved one may identify in that way, how might they go about starting that dialogue?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it deeply depends on the relationship, right? It depends on how open this individual is and how connected we are to them. So, for instance, if I had a family member that was a member of the LGBT community and I wanted to talk to them about it, I would subtly mention my work. I would, show them my rainbow flag. I would talk a little bit about my own identity, right? So if someone is not a member of the LGBT community and they suspect a friend, family member, etc., is, I mean, one of the things they can do is just start by having a dialogue about being an ally. Right. I've been really thinking about, the anti-trans legislation that's happening, and I'm worried about it. How do you have any ideas for how I can become a better ally? Right. So starting the conversation from a place of I want to learn, I want to grow, and making sure that the individual knows what side of the conversation you're on may make them feel more comfortable opening up. I think that in care provision settings, it's about asking open ended questions and not making assumptions or judgments, right? It's about asking, hey, who are the most important people in your life? Right? Instead of asking about husband or wife or kids. And it's about asking, instead of assuming an individual's gender, it's about saying, hi, my name is Sadia. I use she, her pronouns. How would you like me to address you? What would you like me to call you? It's all about putting yourself in that vulnerable position, putting yourself in that open position, and starting with that step of vulnerability so that if someone feels comfortable, they can rise up to match it. I think that in situations like this, where there is so much tension and there is so much fear, it's up to us as allies and accomplices to put ourselves first in that vulnerable position.
Sadia, you talked about as care providers, and really just as any
Mhm.
individual, showing signs that you are a supporter, an ally, an accomplice of the LGBTQ plus community. Also talked about asking those open-ended questions.
Mhm.
Anything more to add about how care providers can show up to best support the LGBTQ elders?
Absolutely. So I think there's a few things to think about here. One is we have to step away from the mindset that this is something extra we're doing and instead think of it as a way we're providing equitable care. Right? What are the things that we need to do to reach the community members that are underserved, reach community members that are not cared for in a proper way? So first, it's that internal paradigm shift, right? how am I providing equitable care versus, I need to change all these processes and programs because I have to do something extra to get this community in
Mhm.
the door, right? So that one thing is a mindset change. And I think the other component of what care providers can do is start integrating the LGBT voice into their everyday programming, right? So when you think about having a book club, maybe one of the books you have at the book club is written by an LGBT author or about an LGBT person, right? If you have movie night, maybe showing an LGBT movie, not saying it's LGBT movie night, but just showing a movie that happens to be LGBT, right? We do this when we think about race. We do this when we think about ability and disability. We have to start doing it when we think about LGBT voices as well. How can we integrate these narratives into our everyday work so that they become normal, so that they become regular, and that these voices are things that our older adults are used to hearing in service provision?
And Terry, from your perspective as an individual who helps deliver the training, is there anything more that you would want to add about how care providers can show up to best support LGBTQ plus elders?
Yeah, the one thing I would add is just to reach out to the folks that they're working with. So I think I work a lot with the older adult centers, senior centers, and having staff reach out to the members about their ideas and their buy-in.
Mhm.
So right, another example of great inclusive programming is sometimes there's bring your grandchild to the older adult center, or talk about your grandchildren, or yeah, that type of programming, that we want to make sure that that's going to be welcoming for those grandparents who have LGBTQ grandchildren, or that they have children who identify as part of the LGBTQ community. And I think of one SAGE program, it was called SAGE Table, and it brought people together over a shared meal, to have conversations and intergenerationally, right, which is something we haven't mentioned yet, but the idea that we want to be able to form intergenerational relationships, not only within the LGBTQ community, but between the non-LGBTQ community, and folks who identify as part of that community, to build trust and connection and share those stories of resiliency and role modeling.
Thank you for bringing that up, especially the intergenerational connections that you started to speak about. That is important topic, and I appreciate you bringing that forward. So, I have a few more questions that are related to Sage for us right now. And I'm curious to learn, what would you say are Sage's priorities and goals moving forward?
Ooh, great question. So Sage is towards the last, I think, 2 or 3 years of this particular strategic plan, and so it has a few goals. One of the biggest goals is financial security for LGBT older adults. So at the beginning of the strategic plan, we did quite a large survey and found that the top three issues that our older adults kind of fear for their future is financial stability, housing, and healthcare. Seems kind of obvious, but those are three of the big areas that we're putting a lot of effort and a lot of information into. So we have our Sage Sense program, which is our financial wellness program. Sage Care also trains financial planners. We're doing a lot of work on financial wellness and building wealth for LGBT elders. The other kind of, along with healthcare and housing, one of the other things that we're working on is really approaching our work from an intersectional perspective. So, LGBT individuals are not just LGBT individuals, they're also people of color, they're also individuals with ability disability issues, they're also individuals that have mental health issues, they're also individuals that are struggling and surviving and hold all these various different identities. So how do we ensure that our programming is really reaching those that are of the highest need, right? How are we reaching individuals that maybe it's not as easy to reach because they're insulated because of these different identities? So we're really Well, we have something called the Equity Innovation Lab, which is grants that we give to organizations that are working on LGBT older adult issues from a unique or interesting perspective. They're, small grants for folks that really want to try innovative problem or try to solve problems in an innovative way. So I think, along with building housing, along with, focusing on trying to empower healthcare providers, Sage Care really is thinking about how do we make the most impact to folks on the ground. That comes through in our Sage Collab project. It comes through in this Equity Innovation Lab. It really is about how do we take the expertise, the longevity, the stability that we have, and help other organizations who are maybe smaller, maybe don't have that same kind of reach or that financial stability, find ways to build it for themselves.
So now I have a question for both of you. And I'll start with Terry this time. What is the most rewarding part of working with the LGBTQ plus elders and Sage for you personally?
Oh my golly, that is it's a great question, and it's a question that doesn't necessarily just have one answer. I think just to, in kind of summary is just the experiences and the opportunities for conversations and connections that I have with the older adults, with the care providers, with their family members, and it really it validates the work I do. And as I said earlier, it truly brings me passion and joy in my life. And I am just so grateful for the opportunities to not only be a Sage Care trainer, but just the work that I do in community in general here in Philadelphia and the surrounding communities. I'm fortunate to be able to be out in community with all kinds of older adults and their caregivers and their families. And I just love it. So yeah. So there you have it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, Sadia, over to you.
All right. So besides Terry being my favorite part of this job, um,
Sadia, you're so funny. You say that all the time.
because I mean it. I
Oh.
think there, just like Terry, there's no one single answer. I think there's a couple of things. I've worked in nonprofits my entire career, and Sage is the first place that's felt like home. It's not, it's pretty unique for someone to stay at a nonprofit, especially an issues driven nonprofit, for as long as I have. Right. Sage feels like home. My coworkers feel like family. I feel like we are doing truly unique and innovative work, and I enjoy it here. I think the other big reason is I want to build a world that I can grow old in. I want to help the people that made it possible for me to exist. I want to be a shoulder for someone to lean on when, the reason I'm allowed to be who I am is because I stand on their shoulders. And I want to build a world that I'm not afraid to grow old in. So I think there's so much that I love about this work, and so much that I'm not going to cry, so much that makes it feel like home to me. Um, yeah, that's a wonderful question.
Mhm.
And what wonderful answers from both of you. And I appreciate you both sharing so openly, both about yourselves and about your experiences, and all the way that Sage shows up for the LGBTQ plus community, as well as how you both show up for the LGBTQ plus community. And I'm sure in so many other ways of your lives. You're both just beautiful people. And I'm honored to have had this experience with you. I'd love to be able to share with our listeners how they can get involved with Sage and support the LGBTQ plus older adults in their communities. So if there's any ways that you could share, I'd love to hear them.
Ooh, so many ways. So, as a national nonprofit, you can go to our website, sign up to receive more information, become a part of our action squad, which is our advocacy squad. So, when there's a bill, when there's something that's coming up in your state that we need to work against in order to support our LGBTQ plus community, you are called to reach out to your Congress folks and get involved. So be a part of our action squad, get on our mailing lists. If you work at an organization that has not been trained, talk to them about Sage Care training and what it can do for you. And I think that on a local level, you can find your local Sage Collab organization and volunteer, get involved, figure out what it is that they need and how you can support them.
Terri, what might you like to add?
Oh, I think just in terms of like that where you are, whatever your role is, right? A family member, a staff person, a community member at your place of worship, at your local community center, to keep our LGBTQ older adults on your radar. And when there's an opportunity for a conversation, to use inclusive language and in kind of do your own little self check about how you yourself can boost um, your inclusive ways with people.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you both, Terri and Sadiya, for joining me today, for your time, as well as your dedication to supporting LGBTQ plus elders and having this thoughtful conversation with me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. This was great. Sadia, always a treat to be with you.
Same to you.
Thank you for listening to Honestly Aging by Friends Life Care VigR, a unique program focused on aging with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience. You can find links and show notes from this episode on our website at friendslifecare.org/podcast. Thank you to Terri Clark and Sadiya Abjani for joining us today. You can learn more about Sage, Terri, and Sadiya by visiting sageusa.org, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and YouTube. And thank you to Nick Dieterding for editing all the Honestly Aging episodes. If you like our show, please rate, review, subscribe, and join us next time. To learn more about aging with vitality, independence, growth, and resilience, subscribe to our blog at friendslifecare.org/blog.